Don't forget about the ladies' book study tomorrow night here at the church in the fellowship hall at 7 p.m. And that's going clear till May 25th. And also March 21st here at the church. Sign up if you're interested in that. It is Chinese carry-in adult banquet. If you're an adult, you're invited. I guess 18 and up, I think. Sign-up sheet is on the bulletin board for everybody interested in that. And also tonight, the youth kids and their families, where we're planning on having a dessert for them to fill out March Madness brackets, hosted by Kevin Beachy. And I've just been told by the Rules Committee, I guess, that there's enough dessert that it's open to everyone now. So as long, the Rules Committee said, as long as you're willing to encourage the teens in filling out brackets. And put that Michigan's going to win it all. Well, I'm going to get slapped by the Rules Committee now. They're going to be after me. All right, let's open in a word of prayer. Dear God, just thank you for this time that we can come together and have fun and enjoy each other, and just help us now as we worship you in song to have our focus on you, and as we learn about our missionary too, that just how we can also do great things for you if we're willing to let you do it. Amen.
I see a lot of maize and blue out there, so don't worry, we'll rejoice in the Lord.
That's right.
You know, because y'all lost today.
The real victors.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wretched treasure. How great the pain of searing loss! The Father turns His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. I will not boast in anything, no gift, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection. What should I gain from His reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: His wounds have paid my ransom. His wounds have paid my ransom. I don't know if y'all know this one, but I used to sing this when I was young, so I don't know this. That was a long 50 years. Come we that love the Lord, and let our joys was swatting a fly. I thought you were waving at me. I have a song I love to sing since I have been redeemed of my Redeemer, Savior, King. Since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, I will glory in His name. Since I have been redeemed, I will glory in my Savior's name. I have a Christ to satisfy. Since I have been redeemed, to do His will, my highest prize. Since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, I will glory in His name. Since I have been redeemed, I will glory in my Savior's name. I have a witness bright and plain. Since I have been redeemed, dispelling every doubt and fear. Since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, I will glory in His name. Since I have been redeemed, I will glory in my Savior's name. I have a home prepared for me. Since I have been redeemed, where I shall dwell eternally. Since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, since I have been redeemed, I will glory in His name. Since I have been redeemed, I will glory in my Savior's name. Pastor Jeff.
I forgot something. Give me half a second. All right, here we go. He told the lame man, take up your bed and walk. Told the preacher, pick up your pulpit and walk. All right. Well, good evening. Welcome back to our third Sunday night of the month of March. Yes, it is already March. I don't know what the date is, but it's the third Sunday. I know that much. If you've ever ridden a roller coaster like the Beast at Kings Island, you clickety 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 up to that peak, and you start to break over. That's where we are in the weather right now. You are right here, and we're dropping 30 degrees in the next 12 hours. So hold on to your socks. It's going to be a ride. It's going to be an interesting one, but praise the Lord, we're in here. Praise the Lord, we had some warmer weather today. At least you get something warm, so enjoy that. What is the name of the missionary we have been reading about? Who is it? Mimi? Nate Saint. What makes Nate Saint one of the coolest missionaries we've looked at? Eli. He likes airplanes. Maybe so do I. So Nate Saint, cool guy. This is a tough one. Where has Nate Saint been living? Anybody remember? Elijah? Okay, good answer. Army base, do you know where that was located? Where he was stationed last? Yes, I had to think about, west. Yes, he's out on the West Coast out in California. In fact, part of what tells us he was in California is that he went up to Yosemite National Park and was hiking up in there and nearly froze to death. So that was our interesting following bear tracks last time. He has contacted a group called CAMF, C-A-M-F, Central Aviation Missionary Fellowship, I think is what it was. It's something like that. Anyhow, and he told them he was going to do something before he joined them. He really wanted to join them, but he thought, you know what? I need to do this before I do that. Do you remember what it was? What was it that he thought he needed to do? Nick. Go to Bible college. He's going to go. He's decided he was going to go. And if he's going to be a missionary, he should get some theology training. So his plan when he gets out of the Army is to do that. So let's pick up February 1946. The war is over. And finally, February 1946, Nate was formally discharged from the Army. It was time for him to head home to Huntington. He boarded a long train carrying discharged soldiers back east. At the same time as Nate was winding his way across the country by train, Betty Green was flying camp's first plane down to Mexico. It was a four-seater, 220-horse, enclosed cabin Waco biplane. Once back in Huntington, Nate had time on his hands again. He wasn't due to start at Wheaton College until the fall. To fill in the time, he bought himself a second-hand airplane and began using it to build up his flying hours. Before long, he had qualified for his commercial pilot's license and his instructor's rating. 3 months after Nate got back home to Huntington, an air crash occurred that would change his life. Not because he was in it, but because he would have to repair the damaged airplane. Betty Green was about to finish her time in Mexico and head for Peru, and George Wiggins, an ex-Navy pilot, had come to replace her. They had taken a flight together to familiarize Wiggins with the area and were attempting to land on a tiny airstrip at El Real, about a mile from the Wycliffe Bible Translators jungle camp in southern Mexico, when their landing went wrong. Fortunately, both pilots had climbed out of the cockpit unhurt, which was more than they could say for the airplane, which lay on its side, its two left wings torn off, its propeller bent out of shape, and its landing gear broken. Betty Green was aware that an accident could shut down camp altogether. Many people were watching the organization to see whether it really was worthwhile and safe to run an airplane just for missionaries. As she looked at the wreckage of the Waco biplane, she knew something had to be done fast. She and George Wiggins were both pilots, but neither of them had any idea how to fix a badly damaged airplane in the middle of a tropical jungle. But Betty Green knew someone who did. By the time the request for help reached Nate Saint via Jim Truxton, the details were a little vague. Somewhere in Mexico was a camp airplane that needed a bit of help. After praying about it, Nate decided to put off going to college and give his time to where it was needed most. He called Jim Truxton and told him that if he was needed, he would be ready to go in as little as 2 weeks. 2 days later, a letter arrived containing rail tickets to the Mexican border. The ticket was dated for 3 days away. Nate raced into action. There was so much to do: photographs to be taken for a passport, visas to be obtained, certified duplicates of his aviation certificates and ratings to be made. He had to sell his plane and a million other little things to be taken care of before he left. Amazingly, on the third day, he was sitting on a train headed south with 40 pounds of tools neatly arranged in a toolbox inside his duffel bag. He never let that bag out of his sight. Without his tools, nothing would be getting repaired in Mexico. The train had crossed the Missouri River into Kansas before it began to dawn on Nate that he'd been too busy getting ready to actually think much about where he was going. He was on a train headed for Laredo on the Texas-Mexico border, but he had not had enough time to study where he should go once he crossed the border. He pulled out the letter Jim Truxton had sent him and read it carefully. The letter contained an apartment address, Apartado 8673 Tuxtla, GTZ, Mexico. He had no clue where that was, only that somewhere in Mexico, in an apartment, in a place called GTZ, someone was waiting for him. All right. Where does Nate go when he gets discharged from the army? Where does he go to? Eli. Home, which is Huntington. Huh? No. Pennsylvania. Okay. There's a lot of Huntingtons running around, okay? Anyhow, he goes back to Huntington, Pennsylvania. What isn't supposed to start until the fall? College, yes. And your name is Isaiah. Sorry, you got the answer out before I got the name out. All right. But what happened down in Mexico that the book says is going to change everything for him, Zach? A plane crash. Betty Green and her new pilot, George Wiggins, have, from the sound of it, ground looped their Waco and took off the left wings, which does occasionally happen on tailwheel airplanes. All right, keep the cough drops rolling. All right. Does Nate? Yeah. So he gets on a train headed south to Mexico. Does he know where he's going when he gets to the border, Elijah? No. He just knows he's headed for the Texas-Mexico border, which is kind of broad, kind of vague. There's a lot of country past there. So let's see what happens. Then, of course, there was the language barrier. Nate knew that Spanish was spoken in Mexico, but he didn't speak Spanish. And as the golden wheat fields of Kansas flashed past his window, marking the journey south, he began to wonder what he'd actually let himself get in for. Perhaps, once he found the plane, things would be easier. After all, couldn't be too badly damaged, because they'd asked for only one mechanic to come fix it. Perhaps he could get it flying again and be back home in time for the fall semester at college. The train continued south, and Nate was glad when, on the last day of his trip to the border, 4 young Mexican men climbed into his carriage. He listened to their Spanish and wondered if he could ever learn to speak the language like they did. In the end, he thought it would take him quite a while to learn to speak it that well. So he had the 4 young men teach him one phrase in Spanish. Is there someone here who speaks English? It seemed the only sensible thing to learn to say. Nate shared with these men the apartment address he was headed for. They looked at it, and they burst out laughing. It was a long time before they finally settled down enough to tell him that an apartado was not an apartment. It was a post office box. Great, thought Nate. Now I'm meeting someone in a post office box in Mexico. Together, they tackled the job of finding Tuxtla, GTZ, on the map. It's a GTZ period. It's an abbreviation of some form. On the map, Nate had tucked away in his duffel bag. Nate assured the men it must be somewhere between the Texas border and Mexico City, because that's where the map seemed to indicate most of the people in Mexico lived. But they could find no GTZ between Texas and Mexico City. Slowly, they scanned further and further down the map until they were at the bottom of Mexico, where it borders Guatemala. There, they found the province of Chiapas. And in the middle of Chiapas, they found the town of Tuxtla Gutierrez. On many maps, it turned out the Gutierrez had been shortened to GTZ. Nate peered at the map, somehow hoping to get a clue as to what Tuxtla Gutierrez would be like. All he could see was a sea of unpronounceable names and places. In Laredo, Nate was going to collect a new propeller for the plane, but he hadn't thought much about carrying it across the border to Mexico. The propeller was 7 feet long, pretty hard to disguise, and not the kind of thing someone entering Mexico on a tourist visa normally carries. The Mexican border guards thought an airplane propeller was a strange tourist item too, and they would not let him into Mexico with it. Let's see. All right. Nate found a phone and called the camp headquarters office in Los Angeles to see what he should do about the problem. He was told to ship the propeller to Mexico City, and since time had been lost, catch a plane there himself. Nate was quite glad to be zipping through the air to Mexico City rather than rumbling along overland by train and bus. All right, so how much Spanish does Nate speak? Malachi, one line. What's his line? There you go. Does anybody here know English? All right. Let's see. Who is it that helped Nate figure out where he was going? Who's helping him? Fia? Yeah, 4 Mexican guys get on the train with him. They help him figure it out. All right. What is Nate supposed to pick up in Laredo? Isaiah? An aircraft propeller, which happens to be how big? Silas? 7 feet tall. Big ol' honking propeller. All right, made of, it's got a laminated wood, but anyhow. All right, let's see, how does he end up getting the propeller into Mexico? What creative option do they come up with? You are Samuel. Shipped it there. Okay, he shipped it there. Good job. So he takes it to, I don't know, probably wasn't FedEx at the time. It was probably somebody reliable. But anyhow, he takes it to a shipping company and ships it as far as Mexico, getting it across the border. All right? So off it goes. He hops an airplane and heads for Mexico City. Also, in Mexico City, Nate was met by Betty Green, who had flown up from Peru. She told him about the damage to the plane. Nate was stunned as he listened. What did she mean when she said he would find the 2 wings and the struts in baskets in the hangar at Tuxtla Airport? Surely they didn't make baskets big enough for airplane wings. As Nate was to find out soon enough, when he peered into the hangar at Tuxtla, it all depends on how small the pieces of the wings are. Propped up behind the baskets of wing pieces was what looked like a pile of junk. As he looked more closely, though, Nate discovered that the pile of junk was actually the struts and the pieces of the landing gear that had been removed from the plane and brought 80 miles out of the jungle to Tuxtla. Standing in the hangar, surveying all the pieces, Nate knew he was going to be in Tuxtla Gutierrez for a very long time. Okay. Nate walked around and tried to imagine how he would tackle the job. He thought about the model planes he'd made as a boy. Perhaps he could approach the job the same way as building a model. In fact, the Waco biplane wasn't a lot different from the models he had made. It was constructed mostly of wood and fabric, and it was just a lot bigger than his model airplanes. And it had a real engine. He plotted out a plan to rebuild the plane. First, he would make the new wing parts from wood. Then he would concentrate on the struts and the wing root that held the wings to the fuselage of the airplane. Finally, he would fix the landing gear. By then, the propeller should have arrived, and he would take it and all the other parts to El Real in the jungle and assemble the wings there. The wings would be much too big to carry in one piece if he assembled them in Tuxtla. The trouble was, Nate was a mechanic, not a woodworker. To get the job done, he would need to find a cabinet maker who could also build airplane wing parts. But how could he find such a person when he couldn't even speak the language? He'd been working hard on learning Spanish, and he could count to 13 with confidence. But he was a long way from being able to tell someone what he wanted them to do. While his Spanish had a ways to go, he could draw simple pictures, which he figured anybody could understand. So with notebook in hand, he drew pictures of a man who worked with chisels and saws and went off to find such a man who wanted a job making parts for an airplane. It was an overwhelming task. Wait, was I supposed to? Nope. Nope. It was an overwhelming task, but amazingly, Nate came back to his one-room house with Santiago, who had immediately understood what Nate wanted done. Santiago was also a good cabinet maker who learned well from pictures, and he didn't mind giving up building cabinets for a while to repair airplane wings. All right. Let's see. How was it that the wings were able to fit in the baskets? How do you get airplane wings in a basket? Haley, they were in pieces. And it's just a matter of what size the pieces are as to whether they fit in a basket. All right? What past experience is going to help Nate fix the wings? What past experience? All right, Maisie. Building model planes. Something that I learned, and I learned years ago, and I started to notice more and more as years went on. Absolutely anything you learn to do is a skill that God can use somewhere. You never know. They didn't teach airplane assembly when he went to aircraft mechanics school. They taught how to repair them, not how to create them. But he had a history and a practice. He had built model airplanes, and he knew the principles of how to build it. It's something God taught him when he was a kid that now God can use to help him in this situation. A very, very wise man told me, doesn't matter if you think you're going to do it forever. If you have the opportunity now, learn to do it now. You never know when it's going to be useful. And that is why I learned to paint houses, because my grandfather was great about that kind of stuff. So you'll learn things, and you never know when you're going to need to climb a scaffolding and cut inside, walls in the church. It's just things you learn. And those skills can be used other places by God. So, who did Nate need to help him with the wings? What kind of a skill set did he need? Mandy, do you know? A cabinet maker? That was an excellent answer. Good job, Mandy. I'm pretty sure she intended to say cabinet maker. So, cabinet maker, he needed somebody who knew how to build small, durable things out of wood. So, he goes out with his pictures, and God provides him with Santiago. All right. Let's keep going. All right, the slow process of rebuilding the wings began. Nate and Santiago began working in the hangar, but the owner wouldn't let them use their tools inside the hangar. It was too hot and raining to do the work outside. There was only one thing left to do. The two men moved their wing building operation to Nate's one-room house. There wasn't much space to spare once the two men and the two wings were inside. The house itself was made of adobe brick with a tile roof. It had a front and a back door, but no windows. The doors themselves were constructed in two halves, much like barn doors or nursery doors. It didn't take Nate long to find out why they were like that. Without the doors open, the room had no sunlight. But when the doors were wide open, there was plenty of sunlight, but pigs, chickens, and burros would then wander through the house to see what the two men were up to. An answer to the problem was soon discovered. With the top half of the door open and the bottom half closed, there was still plenty of sunlight to work by, but the visiting animal problem was solved. There were other animal problems, though. Bats, rats, scorpions, and such all vied for living space in the rafters of the house. They were impossible to get rid of. At first, Nate hunted them down, but as quickly as he did, more came flooding in to fill the empty accommodation space in the rafters. He learned to be very thankful for his mosquito net, which he tucked tightly around his bed each night. The net formed a kind of boundary between his world and the world of rodents, bats, and bugs that took over the little house each night after dark. Not only were the insects and animals a trial, but Nate also found the local food very strange. He thought of the many other uses there must be for tortillas, which tasted to him like cardboard. When he ate frijoles, fried beans. Refried beans. When he ate refried beans and the hot sauce that seemed to smother everything, his stomach revolted. In the end, his stomach would allow him to eat only tomatoes, boiled eggs, and bananas. Despite the food, the creatures in the rafters, Nate kept on working. Each day, Nate took out the blueprints and worked on the wings using the wood parts Santiago had crafted. He often worked late into the night. Finally, though, the heat, poor food, lack of sleep, and stress of the whole project combined to keep him in bed. He was very sick, but he didn't know what he was sick with. There were no doctors around to tell him. His only information came from a basic medical handbook that Betty Green had given him. Nate lay on his stomach and propped the book on his pillow. Somehow he had to figure out what was wrong with him. So he started at A and read all the symptoms for every illness until he got to J, where he found the word jaundiced. A list of symptoms. Weakness? Check. He could hardly drag himself from his bed to the cactus bush outside that he used as a bathroom. Yellow coloring of the eyeballs? He reached for the mirror he kept on the shelf above his bed and pulled down his lower left eyelid. There was a definite yellow tinge in his eyes. As he read through the list, he discovered just how sick he was. He needed help, and he needed it fast. He pushed the medical handbook from his pillow, rolled onto his back, and began to pray. I don't know where Santiago's at. And we'll find out what he does next time. But Nate has gone where the need was, what God has put in front of him to do, and off he's gone. At every turn, God has provided what Nate needs in one way or another. He got everything ready in time, he got on the train, and then God puts a couple of Mexican guys in there that could speak enough English to understand what he was saying, and he could figure out where the place was. He gets the airplane, he gets the propeller across the border, he gets to Mexico City, he gets to where he's going, and he needs a cabinet maker, and God provides a cabinet maker. Now he is sick, dangerously ill, and he needs medical help. What does Nate do? It said he rolled over and began to pray. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. So we look at that, a very familiar verse, but very important. Paul giving kind of some bullet point instructions to the church there before he finishes his letter. He says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." We serve an all-powerful God. And when he's got a job for us to do, he will provide. But you know what he does? He does say, ask me. We do need to remember to ask. Whether that's for big, crazy things like, how do I put an airplane together? Or the little things like, how do I write the rest of this paper and get a passing grade? Regardless of where you're at, God says, bring your requests to me. Why? Why does it matter for us to ask him? Because when I go to God and say, God, I need your help to get this done, I'm saying I can't do it. I'm humbling myself and asking for God's help. Just like we saw this morning, when God works and God moves, God gets the glory for what we're doing. So kids, as you are continuing through this school year, as you are looking more towards graduating, moving on with your life, failing the tournament because you're stuck with the Stutzmans, whatever you're having to do, that's an inside joke, sort of. Anyhow, whatever it is that you are headed towards doing, trust God and ask for his help. We need to be taking our requests to him and asking him. God does amazing things. We just do need to ask and then submit to his plan. All right, we will continue with Nate Saint at a later date. The third Sunday night of next month would be my assumption is when we'll do that. Any questions about Nate Saint and what he did or what the chapter was or our verse? Any questions? All right. That being said, Mike, would you close in prayer, sir?